He coached their soccer team every Saturday for 12 years. He never missed a single game. He knew every teacher's name, every friend's birthday, every dream they had for themselves. Then a school genetics project asked a simple question about blood types, and Marcus Cole's entire world stopped making sense in the space of one dinner table conversation. This is the story of a man who gave everything, and the woman who let him. The kitchen table in the Cole home had always been the center of Marcus's world. 12 years of homework, birthday cakes, and Sunday morning pancakes had made it sacred. Tonight, it was covered in poster boards and colored markers, Tyler and Maya working with the focused energy of children who actually cared about their grades. Marcus sat at the head of the table, his reading glasses perched on his nose, a cold cup of coffee forgotten beside him. He was supposed to be reviewing quarterly reports, but watching his twins work had always been his favorite distraction. Tyler, tall and sharp-featured for 12, was drawing a careful diagram of dominant and recessive genes, his tongue pressed between his teeth in concentration. Maya, lean and hazel-eyed, was writing out a trait comparison chart with the precision of a child who had inherited nothing of Marcus's broad, deliberate handwriting. Nothing. The word settled in Marcus's chest before his conscious mind understood why. He leaned forward slightly, studying the chart. Eye color: brown dominant, blue recessive. His eyes were brown. Diane's were hazel. Both twins had hazel eyes. Blood type: Marcus was O positive. Diane was A positive. Tyler had listed his blood type as AB positive. Marcus felt a coldness begin at the base of his spine. He knew enough basic biology to understand that two parents with O positive and A positive blood could not produce an AB positive child. He stood carefully, excused himself, and walked to the hallway bathroom. He gripped the edge of the sink, staring at his own reflection, his brown eyes, his broad face, his dark hair. Then Tyler's sharp features, Maya's lean build, the way neither of them had ever quite looked like him. He turned on the cold water. He was a numbers man. He needed data, not speculation. He needed proof. He dried his hands, studied his reflection one last moment, and walked back to the kitchen, where his children were still drawing their genetics project, completely unaware that their father had just begun pulling at a thread that would unravel everything. 3 days passed before Marcus allowed himself to act. 3 days of lying awake beside Diane, running the same calculations over and over. He told himself a dozen reassuring things in those sleepless nights, but the accountant in him could not find an alternative explanation for an AB-positive child born to an O-positive father. On the 4th morning, while Diane was at her yoga studio and the twins were at school, Marcus moved through his own home like a stranger. The DNA kit had arrived in a plain brown package addressed to his office. He had opened it alone, read the instructions 3 times, and brought it home in his briefcase. He collected Tyler's sample first, a used drinking glass left on the bathroom counter. Maya's came from a hairbrush on her dresser. His own sample he collected last, a cheek swab in the downstairs bathroom, his hand steady with the terrible calm of a man emotionally preparing for the worst. He packaged everything carefully, labeled each sample, and sealed the envelope. He sat at the kitchen table and held it for a long moment. 12 years of memories lived in these walls. First steps, Christmas mornings, the twins asleep on the couch after long car trips. He thought about not sending it. He thought about choosing comfortable uncertainty over devastating truth. But he had never been able to look at an incorrect number and pretend it was right. He stood, picked up his car keys, and drove to the post office before he could change his mind. The email arrived on a Tuesday afternoon while Marcus was alone in his office, door closed, phone face up on the desk. He had told his assistant he was not to be disturbed. He had eaten nothing since breakfast. The subject line read, "Your DNA relationship results are ready." He stared at it for a full minute before clicking. The report loaded. He read the first result, then the second. Then he read them both again, with the careful precision of a man checking figures on a financial statement. The probability of paternity for sample A, Tyler, was 0.00%. The probability of paternity for sample B, Maya, was 0.00%. Marcus put his phone face down on the desk with a slow, deliberate movement. He sat very still, hands flat on the desk surface, staring at the middle distance where a framed photo of the twins at age 6, gap-toothed and grinning, sitting on his shoulders at a Georgia Bulldogs game. He did not cry. He had expected somewhere in the back of his mind that he might cry when this moment came. Instead, he felt something quieter and more devastating, the sensation of a foundation dissolving beneath him, slowly and completely, leaving him suspended in a space where nothing he had believed about his life was true. 12 years, every soccer practice, every school run, every fever sat through at 3 a.m., every birthday, all of it built on something that never existed. He picked up his phone and read the result one more time, because accountants checked their figures twice. The numbers had not changed. He set the phone down and for a long time simply breathed in the silence of his closed office while 12
Marcus
years of his
chose
life
a Sunday
rearranged
evening for the
themselves
confrontation,
into something he
after
did
the
not
twins
yet
had
have
gone to their
words
friend's
for.
house for a sleepover. He needed the house empty. He sat in the living room when Diane came downstairs, casual in her weekend clothes, a glass of wine in her hand, and he watched her cross the room with the strange doubled vision of a man simultaneously seeing the woman he married and a stranger he had never met. He placed his phone on the coffee table between them, the DNA results on the screen. He said nothing. He simply waited for her eyes to find it. The moment they did, he saw everything he needed to see. It was not confusion. It was not innocent bewilderment. It was the specific expression of someone watching a door they have kept locked for 12 years finally swing open. The wine glass trembled in her hand. Her other hand went immediately to her hair, the nervous habit he had seen 1,000 times and never understood until this moment. Marcus kept his voice very quiet when he spoke. He asked her to tell him the truth, all of it, from the beginning. Diane set the wine glass down and told him. There had been someone else, Raymond Holt, briefly, before Marcus, during a period when their relationship was undefined. She had not known she was pregnant when she ended things with Raymond. By the time she discovered she was carrying twins, she was already deeply committed to Marcus, already certain he was the man she wanted, already too afraid of losing him to tell the truth. She had chosen, she said, she had chosen Marcus. She said this as if it were a gift she had given him. Marcus listened to all of it without moving. When she finished, he asked one question. Had she ever intended to tell him? The silence that followed was the only answer he needed. He stood, picked up his phone, and walked upstairs. He did not slam the door. He did not shout. He sat on the edge of the bed and understood that 12 years behind him and the years ahead were two entirely different lives. The law offices of Patricia Burns were in downtown Savannah, and Marcus sat in the waiting room long enough to read the same framed certificate on the wall 4 times without retaining a word. Patricia Burns was in her mid-50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the manner of a woman who had sat across from devastated people for 30 years and learned to be precisely as warm as was useful. She listened to Marcus without interrupting, making occasional brief notes. He had brought the DNA results printed in a folder because he was an accountant, and accountants brought documentation. In Georgia, she explained, a man in his position could petition the court for relief from a paternity judgment on grounds of fraud. The DNA results were unambiguous and would be the foundation of the case. Financial recovery of child support already paid was possible, but not guaranteed. She outlined each step with precision. What she could not outline, she acknowledged, were the decisions outside the legal process, his relationship with Tyler and Maya, how and when they would be told, what role, if any, he chose to maintain in their lives. These were not questions the court would answer. Marcus nodded. He had known the law could address the financial architecture of his situation and nothing else. The real decisions, who he was on the other side of this, were his alone to make. He thanked Patricia Burns, shook her hand, and rode the elevator down to the Savannah Street, where the afternoon was bright and entirely indifferent to the fact that his life had just been formally divided into before and after. Marcus picked up the twins from their friend's house on Sunday evening and drove them home through familiar Savannah streets while they argued cheerfully in the back seat about which superhero would win in a fight, a debate they had been conducting in various forms since they were 6 years old. He kept his eyes on the road and let their voices fill the car and thought about how thoroughly ordinary it felt and how it was the last ordinary evening he could give them for a very long time. He made pasta, their favorite, the one with the particular combination of garlic and olive oil that Tyler called the good kind and Maya always requested for her birthday. He stood at the stove and listened to them doing homework at the kitchen table behind him, the scratch of pencils and the occasional disagreement about an answer, and he fixed the texture of these sounds in his memory with deliberate attention. They ate together. Tyler complained about his math teacher. Maya announced she had been cast in the school play. Marcus congratulated her and drew Tyler into admitting his low grade was not actually the teacher's fault. Diane was not at dinner. He had not told the twins anything yet. After dinner, Tyler fell asleep on the couch watching television, and Maya read quietly in the armchair, and Marcus sat between them in the warm lamplight and understood with a clarity that was almost unbearable that whatever the law decided, whatever papers were filed, whatever biological truth the DNA had revealed, these 12 years had been real. The love had been real, and what he did next would determine what kind of man he had always been, underneath everything that had been taken from him.
It took Marcus 3 weeks and a private investigator named Clyde Ferris, a former Savannah police detective who operated out of a small office on Price Street, to locate Raymond Holt. He was in Atlanta, working as a contractor, living in an apartment in Midtown. Clyde sent the address and a photograph in an email that Marcus opened on his lunch break in his office, eating nothing while he looked at the image of a man who had fathered his children without ever knowing they existed. Raymond Holt was lean and sharp-featured in the way Marcus had expected. He could see it in Tyler's jawline now, in the precise angle of Maya's cheekbones. The photograph showed a man of his own age, confident posture, leather jacket, a visible tattoo on his left wrist. A man who had been living his life entirely unencumbered for 12 years while Marcus coached soccer and attended school plays and paid every bill. Marcus drove to Atlanta on a Saturday morning in October while the twins were at their mother's. He had not told Patricia Burns he was doing this. He understood it was not strictly necessary for the legal case, and he understood that his reasons for making the drive were not entirely rational. But there was a conversation he needed to have, not for the court, not for the papers, but for himself. He needed to look at the man whose existence had been the central fact of his life for 12 years, without Raymond Holt ever knowing Marcus Cole existed. He sat in his car across the street from the Midtown apartment building for 40 minutes before he got out. His large hands rested on the steering wheel. He thought about what he was going to say. He thought about what a man like Raymond Holt might say back. He took a slow, deliberate breath and crossed the street. Raymond Holt answered his apartment door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, cup of coffee in hand, with the easy confidence of a man who had never spent a Saturday morning worrying about anything in particular. He looked at Marcus with polite incomprehension for exactly 2 seconds before Marcus said Diane's name, and then something shifted in Raymond's face, a very quick recalibration, a man rapidly assessing a situation he had not prepared for. "I raised your children for 12 years, Marcus said. His voice was entirely level. "Twins, Tyler and Maya. They're 12, and Diane just told me you're their biological father." Raymond stared at him, the coffee cup lowered slowly. "I didn't know. I didn't know she was pregnant." He ran a hand through his hair. "I haven't talked to Diane in... It's been over 12 years. "I know," Marcus said. "I'm not here about what you knew. I'm here because I needed to see you. I needed to understand what I'd been living inside of for 12 years. He looked at Raymond with a directness that made the other man step back slightly, not from any physical threat, but from the particular weight of being seen by someone who has been profoundly wronged. "You'll be hearing from my attorney. There will be proceedings regarding the children. You'll need legal representation. Yeah." Raymond looked genuinely shaken now, the confidence stripped away, standing in his doorway holding his coffee cup while his Saturday morning became something he had not remotely anticipated. "I'm sorry," he said, "for what it's worth." Marcus studied him for a moment. Then he turned and walked back down the hallway without another word. He had seen what he came to see. Raymond Holt was not a monster. He was simply a man who had lived his life without knowing the consequences of one season of it, while Marcus had lived the consequences every day. Marcus drove back from Atlanta on the I-16 with the Georgia landscape flattening out on either side and the radio off. He had 3 hours to think on the drive, and he used all of them. By the time the Savannah skyline appeared on the horizon, he had made the decision that had been forming for weeks, the one that had nothing to do with the courts and everything to do with who he was. He would tell the twins the truth. He would not wait for the court proceedings to be complete. Tyler and Maya were 12 years old enough to begin understanding, young enough that the truth delivered with love and patience had a better chance of landing correctly than the truth discovered later through legal documents and adult conversations conducted around them. They deserved to hear it from him, directly, with his full presence. He called Patricia Burns from a gas station outside Savannah and told her his decision. She said it was his right to make and offered to recommend a family therapist who specialized in exactly this kind of disclosure. He took the name and the number and thanked her and got back in the car. The twins were home when he arrived, back from their mothers, doing homework at the kitchen table in the ordinary way. Marcus stood in the kitchen doorway for a moment, looking at them. Tyler had Raymond Holt's jawline and Marcus Cole's Saturday afternoon energy. Maya had Diane's hazel eyes and Marcus's habit of chewing a pencil when she was thinking. They were both entirely themselves, built from genetics he had no part in, and from 12 years of a life he had built for them, brick by brick, with his own hands. He walked into the kitchen. "I need to talk to you both about something important," he said, "when you're ready." Tyler looked up. Maya set down her pencil. They were ready. They had always trusted him. That, at least, was entirely real. Savannah Family Court on the day of the hearing had the quiet gravity of a room where lives are formally rearranged. Marcus arrived early in his dark suit, the one he wore for important occasions. Patricia Burns met him at the courtroom door, composed in the way that communicated absolute confidence, the calm of someone who has performed this procedure many times and does not doubt the outcome. Diane's attorney presented the defense with professional competence. the circumstances, the established bond, the impact on the children. He did not challenge the DNA because there was no legal utility in challenging science. He asked the court to consider what justice truly meant in a situation this complex. Then Patricia rose. She presented the certified DNA results. She presented 12 years of child support payment records organized into a bound exhibit. She cited Georgia statute on fraudulently obtained child support. She presented documentation of Diane's prior relationship with Raymond Holt, predating the twins' conception. She asked the court to consider not what sympathy required, but what the law and 12 years of deliberate financial fraud required. The room was still when she sat down. The judge read through the exhibits carefully. Diane's attorney leaned in to speak quietly with her. Marcus did not look at Diane. He looked at the Georgia state seal on the wall behind the bench and waited. The judge read the ruling in the unhurried voice of someone who understood that her words would echo far beyond this room. Paternity disestablishment granted. The record would reflect that Marcus Cole was not the legal father of Tyler and Maya Cole. Raymond Holt would be notified and separate proceedings initiated. Additionally, and here the courtroom was very still, given the clear documentation of deliberate and sustained deception over 12 years and the financial records demonstrating consistent child support payments totaling $168,000, the court found that Diane Cole had obtained these payments through willful misrepresentation. The court ordered full repayment with a structured payment plan to be submitted within 60 days. Marcus sat very still while Patricia touched his arm briefly, a professional acknowledgement. He thought about 12 years, $168,000, Tyler's first soccer goal, Maya's first school play, the stone in his chest at last beginning to dissolve. He stood. He shook Patricia's hand. He walked out of Savannah Family Court into the Georgia afternoon and stood on the steps with his large hands in his pockets. His phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. "How did it go, Dad?" Marcus looked at the word Dad for a long moment. Then he typed back, "Justice served. Soccer Saturday?" The reply came immediately, a soccer ball emoji, and duh. Marcus sat with Tyler and Maya in the living room on a Saturday afternoon 3 weeks after the court hearing. The family therapist Patricia had recommended, a quiet, patient man named Dr. Andrew Fields, had helped Marcus prepare for this conversation across 3 sessions, helping him find words that were honest without being brutal, true without being weaponized against their mother. He told it simply. There had been something he'd needed to find out. He'd had a test done. The test showed that biologically he was not their father. He explained what that meant legally and what it meant practically, and he explained clearly, with full eye contact, what it did not mean. It did not mean the 12 years had not been real. It did not mean he was walking away. It did not mean the love was retroactively false. Tyler was very still while Marcus talked. Maya's hazel eyes filled with tears she did not let fall. When Marcus finished, there was a long silence in the living room, the particular silence of children absorbing something too large for immediate response. Then Tyler said, "You're still our dad," not as a question, as a settled fact, delivered with the directness of a 12-year-old boy who had decided what was true and was announcing it. Marcus nodded once firmly, in complete agreement. Marcus felt something in his chest break open in a way that was entirely different from the breaking of 2 months ago. This breaking was warm. He leaned forward and put his arms around both of them and held his children. They were his children in every way that was real and permanent and beyond the reach of any court ruling, and did not say anything because there was nothing left to say that the 3 of them did not already know.
The first repayment installment arrived on a Wednesday morning in November.
A bank transfer that appeared in Marcus's account at 10:23 a.m. while he was reviewing spreadsheets at his desk. He stared at the notification for a moment. Then he put his phone down and finished the spreadsheet. He thought about what the money represented, not what it would buy, though $168,000 mattered concretely in the life of a man who had paid it over 12 years out of an accountant's salary. What mattered was what the transfer confirmed, that the truth was now on record, that the financial architecture of 12 years of deception had been formally dismantled and rebuilt on honest foundations. Raymond Holt had retained his own attorney, and separate proceedings were moving forward. Marcus was not involved in that process, and did not need to be. That was between Raymond and the court, and whatever relationship he and the twins might eventually build or not build on their own terms. Marcus's part of the story had reached its legal conclusion. He called Dr. Fields that evening and scheduled one final session, not because he was struggling, but because he wanted to be deliberate about closing this chapter with the same care he had given to opening it. He had been careful throughout. He wanted to be careful at the end. Marcus showed up to Tyler's Saturday soccer game in December the same way he had shown up to every soccer game for the past 8 years. 20 minutes early, his old coaching clipboard under his arm out of habit, a thermos of coffee because Georgia December mornings were colder than people gave them credit for. He was not the coach anymore. Tyler had aged into the senior league, and the organization had its own coaches now. But he had his usual spot on the sideline, and Tyler had texted him the night before to confirm he was coming, which Marcus understood was the 12-year-old version of saying that it mattered. Maya came with him, standing beside him on the sideline with her own thermos, giving him her running commentary on Tyler's performance with the frank authority of a younger sister who had been watching her brother play soccer since she could walk. Marcus listened and responded, and watched Tyler make a crossing pass that set up the first goal, and the sound that came out of him was entirely genuine and required no performance whatsoever. Afterward, Tyler came off the field, sweaty and grinning, and went straight to Marcus. They did the handshake they had invented together when Tyler was 6, 3 specific movements that were entirely theirs, built over years, residing in muscle memory. It required no words and no explanation. It simply existed, the way real things do, indifferent to everything that had tried to touch it. Spring returned to Savannah the way it always did, with moss on the oaks and the particular smell of the marshes warming up, and the sound of the city shifting into its lighter register after winter. Marcus noticed it with more attention than he had in several years. Something had changed in his capacity for noticing, the stone gone from his chest, the calculations his brain had been running in the background for months finally quiet. He was running again, something he had given up in his 30s when life narrowed his mornings to coffee and commutes. 3 miles each morning through the Savannah Historic District, past the squares and the old churches and the moss-hung oaks, the city quiet and familiar around him. He thought while he ran, not the obsessive circular thinking of the investigation months, but the ordinary productive thinking of a man planning forward. The twins came for their spring break, all 5 days, Marcus's house, by their own choice. A choice Tyler announced with the casual authority of someone who has decided what is true and is simply communicating it. They cooked together and argued about movies, and Marcus let him and Maya beat him at chess 3 times because she was actually getting better, and it genuinely required effort to let her win now. On the last evening of spring break, the 3 of them sat on the back porch in the Georgia dusk, the air warm and green-smelling, and Marcus understood with the clarity of a man standing on honest ground that this was what had survived everything. Not the marriage, not the legal fiction, not the 12 years of misplaced trust. This, the 3 of them on a porch in the Savannah spring, was what had been built underneath it all, solid and real, out of nothing but showing up. It was entirely his. It always had been. It always would be. Marcus Cole paid child support for 12 years for 2 children who were not biologically his, and at the end of it, those children still called him Dad, because what he built over 12 years was something biology never gave him and could never take away. If this story moved you, subscribe to Shattered Crown Stories TV. A new story drops every single day. Hit that notification bell. Someone out there is living through exactly this right now. Let them know they are not alone.